Hello, so I'm going to do a video about Scientology. I've been really interested in it lately. Oh wait, maybe I should watch that one first. Hello, here's my video talking about Scientology. Deconstructing Scientology. I've been watching a lot of videos about it over the last few days, and didn't watch all the videos, but it's super fascinating, and I think I'll keep watching videos after doing this video, but it's time to do the video on that. I wanted to do it on my bike, but I don't have the energy. My body is too lethargic, so excuse me if I yawn. So, yeah, Scientology is an interesting phenomenon. I've done some other videos about Scientology, talking about myself and requests and stuff, but never actually having done some research. And last night I read the Wikipedia article on L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige, and I've been watching the videos on surviving Scientology, and I saw the from a defector, and I saw the interviews of the defectors and the hearings in 1982, and so anyways, so what is Scientology? Well, for those who don't know at all, Scientology is recognized by the IRS as a religion, and the people who are in it say that it's a religion started by L. Ron Hubbard, and their Bible is Dianetics, and which was written, I guess, in the 50s or something. L. Ron Hubbard was a pulp fiction writer. He was a science fiction writer from the, I guess, the golden age of pulp fiction. Science fiction back in the... he was born in 1911, so I guess in the 30s and 40s was when he was doing his work. So he knew people like Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, and yeah, some other guys who I haven't heard of. And then he decided to create a religion. So, Scientology basically, is, according to me, is kind of like a bunch of people who creating their own little parallel reality, where they don't want to play by the rules of consensual reality of everybody else. Make their own little make-believe world with their make-believe rules, and basically pretend that they're better than everybody else, and they have their little religious techniques and stuff that they use with their e-meter, which is this thing that you hold in both of your hands, and it's a lie detector. It's if you send a certain have a thought about something, it sends a different kind of electric current through it. It can pick it up, and the little needle comes up. It's a crude lie detector. I heard that people can make them out of USB, like computer versions of them, so that'd be cool to get my hands on one. They should sell them at Radio Shack. So my personal experience with Scientology is back when I was in 10th grade, back in 1990, I had a friend in high school who was a Scientologist, and he brought me over to the Scientology church. There was a Scientology church in Boulder back then, right on Pearl Street Mall in the basement. And I went in and saw the people. They had a little sauna in there where they did the purification and everything. And I watched the video, the promotional video. They put me in a room to watch a promotional video of this guy who, I guess it showed him really sad, and then he read the book, and then all of a sudden he was happy. And I was like, wow. So I left. I thought that was just really his most simplified thing, but So I think Scientology basically is a bunch of people who want to be alternative, be in an alternative group for whatever reason, and but they're not smart enough, usually because of their probably a lack of education, lack of exposure to things, various religions and cultures, that they can't, they don't have the common sense to tell what is, what's right, the difference between right and wrong, and truth and untruth and stuff. And so basically what Scientology is created by L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard was a guy who traveled around the world. He was with his family and as part of the Navy and stuff. He went to China and I don't know which countries, but he and then he was really creative, and he wrote a bunch of science fiction books. So he gathered various information from different religions and cultures, and then would use that information for his books. But when it came to Scientology and Dianetics and everything, he would gather all the information from these different religions and cultures, and then basically steal from it, and regurgitate it in his own way, and even in his own language, as though he was the original, as though it was an original idea of his, and all the people who he got the information from had the distorted truth, that so he has the real truth and they have the distorted, more primitive. And so his technology is the new and improved. And he says that all of his information that he got to create his ideas about stuff and philosophy and religious practices and stuff was all found through exhaustive scientific experiments. But he made it all up. So he's basically a con man who used every trick in the book to get people to follow him. And so the big question about Scientology is, what made L. Ron Hubbard tick? Where did he get his ideas from? And why? Like, how did he possibly get so many followers to pay so much money? And how does it continue to this day? That's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. And which would be the subject of this video. So basically, to put the long story short, L. Ron Hubbard was one of these guys who was a scumbag from the very beginning, and and I think he had a mental illness. I think he was clinically schizophrenic, and I'll talk about that. But he was kind of like, that movie Pain and Gain with Mark Wahlberg and The Rock. If you've ever seen it, L. Ron Hubbard reminds me of Mark Wahlberg's character, where Mark Wahlberg, he'll make really stupid decisions and then they'll get busted, and then he'll blame The Rock for being the one who made the decision, I don't know and every once in a while you'll see a movie where you'll have a character like that. Well, they're just pure evil and manipulative, and they're like hey, let's speed right now. Go. No, I don't want to. Yeah, speed. Okay. And then they get pulled over, and then afterwards he's like, "Why did you speed, man? I told you not to speed." They're like, they have absolutely no conscience, and that's basically what L. Ron Hubbard was. I read the Wikipedia article of him, and he he went to China, only talked trash about the Chinese. He got a post as a captain of a couple of vessels during World War II, but got demoted. And I think he got the post because, well, his dad was in the Navy, and also because he was really charming and manipulative, and he got this congressman to write a letter of recommendation for him, but he wrote it, and then just got the congressman to sign it. And but he got demoted because he was just incompetent and didn't think things through and wasn't a good leader. And at one point he got deposed from his second one because he shelled a Mexican island in World War II, thinking that it was uninhabited. He just didn't have anything better to do, and there were people on it. But yeah. So then he wrote a bunch of these books. I guess he in Wikipedia he holds the world record for most published books, over 1,000 published books and articles. He so basically, I think what Scientology is. So basically, what makes L. Ron Hubbard tick, what he's all about, is I think he was a high functioning schizophrenic. I knew a schizophrenic once, both medicated and then non-medicated, and then medicated again. And so I had a pretty interesting experience of the contrast. And schizophrenics have a brain chemical imbalance where their brains are pretty much melted. So, and maybe some people are schizo because they did too many drugs, and maybe that's why L. Ron Hubbard was. And sometimes because it's just a unfortunate genetic anomaly that hit him, but their brains are unglued, so they basically have all of these disjointed thoughts bouncing around all over the place that aren't based on actual reality. And so when they start talking, they're interesting to listen to because they'll say lots of like interesting, random comments about things, but they're random and they don't really have any basis in reality, and they don't go anywhere. They're just bouncing around. And it's funny. I was with my schizo friend once, and this is when he was medicated. Because when he's not medicated. Because when he's not medicated, he just talks to himself all day long. You can't even talk to him. But yeah, we were there at the sushi bar, and he's just talking, babbly, like one way. You can't have a two-way conversation with them, even when they're medicated. And then the guy next to us is like, "Wow, just to interject, I don't know what you guys are saying, but it sounds really interesting. Good job in you guys having an intelligent conversation." So it kind of, if you're not paying attention, it sounds like they're having they're really smart. Kind of like they'd say stuff like, you'll give them an idea about something, and then I'll go, "Oh, you'll say something interesting and esoteric, like something about time travel or something, and then they'll come up with their own idea about time travel, and but that isn't related to anything, just their own. They're just out of the blue, Okay, I guess I should give an example. I could be time travel. I could be like, yeah, parallel universe is time travel. And you go to another parallel universe, and then they're like, oh yeah, that'd be awesome to put a time travel a whole planet, and then put the planet from 500 years ago over there where the moon is now, and then we can have two planets revolving around each other, and then you can go to the other planet to say hi to yourself, stuff like that. That has no basis in reality. That's fantasy, but it's interesting to to kind of listen to him talk. And so people like that could, if they're high functioning schizophrenic, could be a good storyteller, making up really weird science fiction ideas and stuff. And but the problem is that, and in a low functioning schizophrenic, they can't function. Their brains are so unglued that they're having so many random thoughts, and if they don't get on the medication, they can go overboard, and then they're just straight up imagining things, and like fantasy beings are coming in the room, and they're actually having two-way conversations with people who aren't there that they think are there, and then and arguments with them, and telling stories, and coming up with with and when they get on medication, it really helps. In my experience, my friend was in a lot better shape when he was medicated, because I think what the medication does is it glues your brain together. It it makes it so that in your brain, the synapses that are firing inside of your brain are more linear. They're more, you can focus in on certain ones more, and not all of the synapses are firing at the same time, and so you're just bouncing around and paying attention to everything. And so I think that's what L. Ron Hubbard was. I think he was a schizophrenic who was also really bad person. And I guess schizophrenia can make you a bad person because you're living in your own little world, and when you're in your own little world, you can become psychopathic and sociopathic, where you don't other people who are in the real world are kind of like a figment. You see them as kind of like a figment of your imagination. They're not real. They're just as real to you as one of your science fiction characters that you make up. They can't really tell the difference, and so they don't really feel you there. They don't care about you. Just like somebody would kill somebody off in a book and not feel sad for them. You could kill somebody off in real life and not feel sad for them because your consciousness is just so out there and bouncing around in all these different places, and so it can make you very unempathetic. And that's what L. Ron Hubbard did. L. Ron Hubbard exhibited all of that stuff, and so being a schizo can make you evil, make you a mean person. But he was and L. Ron Hubbard was a mean person who had and he had been people who met him who weren't Scientologists described him as that, as like a paranoid schizophrenic with delusions of grandeur. He had the delusions of grandeur, and I think maybe because I think he had delusions of grandeur because he was doing pretty well. He did okay with his science fiction books, and he'd have all these ideas, and then he didn't know the difference between the ideas in his head. They were real to him, and then he would tell them to other people, and then when people wouldn't understand him, it would make him really angry. And when people try to tell him that he's crazy, he would get angry with them and tell them that they're crazy. And that's actually what my friend was dealing with. That's why my friend got off of the medication, because he it shut his brain down enough that I guess he couldn't think as much, and it made him feel I guess bored, and he got off of it, and he was having more fun when he had all the thoughts going around all the time in his head. And so maybe L. Ron Hubbard was actually a schizophrenic who was diagnosed, and put on some. I don't know if they didn't have medication in those days, but he was living in his own world, and he just got angry that other people didn't understand him, and so then he would think that he's better than everybody else. But the interesting thing about Scientology is that he managed to convince people that what he said was all true and real, and they followed him, and so it set in motion this whole movement, this whole religion, based off of empty nothing, of just made up, stolen ideas about stuff, like stolen ideas about every religious idea, lots of different religious ideas. And then I guess let me talk about that, because I read Dianetics. I listened to Dianetics the first hour. There's this one copy here on the internet that's only an hour long. I don't know how much it is. It's probably about half the book, because the book's not that big. But he would take certain ideas like, well, let me say just talk about the philosophy of Dianetics and Scientology. It's that we have the reactive mind and the non-reactive mind, the analytical mind. The reactive mind is basically all of these negative engrams that are stored on a cellular level in us that make us that distort, that aberrate our perceptions on everything. And so what we need to do is get on that e-meter and flush out all of these negative engrams. And so I think that's kind of related to the Buddhist idea of sankharas, where you live many lives and you have various negative biases that you collect over many lives, and in this life also, and they get stored actually in your body and in your mind, and to become enlightened, you meditate and focus on it, and they arise. It's like stirring up dirty water. They actually rise and come out of your body and your mind, and it's uncomfortable as they're going out, and then they're gone. And he probably read some Buddhist philosophy, and then they decided to come up with that idea. And then the whole idea of reincarnation. He heard about the idea of reincarnation in Buddhism, and then came up with the idea of reincarnation himself, and said that, like he came up with it all by himself from his imagination. And and look, as a matter of fact, the Buddhists believe it too, because he never gave any credit to anybody else giving him an idea. It was like he came up with the idea himself, and it was the new and improved upon everybody else. But there's all kinds of inconsistencies in Dianetics. For example, he says that these negative engrams are stored on the cellular level. So all of our the reactive mind, which takes the power away from us and makes us kind of mindlessly react to things, is actually stored on a cellular level. And I think he got some of those ideas from Sigmund Freud. And he did study that kind of stuff in school, according to the Wikipedia page. And Sigmund Freud was a guy who invented the idea of the subconscious mind, where we store all of these ideas about the world that we learned from our society as we were growing up, and then which causes us to behave and believe in a certain way, and gives us our biases on everything. And so, it sounds similar to what L. Ron Hubbard says. It sounds really similar. But then he adds new things in there just to make it sound original. But the problem is the new things that he adds in there, it's just out of his imagination, and it's not based on fact or any logic. The book, he says, all of his ideas about everything were incorporated were gathered through extensive scientific research. but he never. So he says he's a scientist, because that was the science of the mind, because that was in the early days of psychiatry when they were coming up with different, psychiatry actually is the science of the mind, different experiments and scientifically found ideas about stuff. I don't know all that much about psychiatry, but he never talked about the scientific experiments. He never said what they were. He just said that, and if you go to the Scientology YouTube channel, they keep saying, it was found, it has been discovered, but that's it. There's no, and I guess nobody ever asked him what his scientific experiments were. None of his followers. He just made it all up. So, so basically, what L. Ron Hubbard did was take all of the positive things of all the different religions and philosophies and everything, and just leech off of it, skim off of it, and take what he wanted, and then just embellish it as his own. So that brings me to the point of how could he possibly have found so many followers, and how does Scientology continue to survive? How did it become so successful? And I think it became successful because subconsciously, all of us know all of these very old philosophical ideas, and such as reincarnation and karma and stuff related to the stuff that he says. We all know that stuff to be true. And so when he says it, we're all, when he's talking about past lives and conditioning with the engrams and then the scientific experience and stuff, when he says that stuff, people like it because they already believed it from some other source, even though they don't remember where the source was, or because, it makes sense to believe in reincarnation. And so it sucks people in. But it sucks people into his mind, his crazy mind, his little world. And the more they get sucked into his religion, the crazier it gets. So it's kind of like, which gives him a huge advantage when he's just, ripping this stuff off from all these other people. It's kind of like, like if somebody gets the secret formula to Coca-Cola, you steal the secret formula and then you start making your own Coca-Cola and you tell everybody that it's yours. But you didn't see the one ingredient in the Coca-Cola that kept it healthy or something. It's kind of hard to describe, but so people, and see, this was like 60 years ago when people were still really culturally ignorant. And so if he started bringing into these new ideas about all these other things, it was kind of new to them. And so they had never thought about reincarnation. They didn't know the Buddhists believed that. And so when he mentions it, they like the idea and they listen to him as though he invented it. And the subconscious or reactive and all this kind of stuff and all the scientific experiments. People like the idea of scientific experiments, so they listen to him even more. And so it was kind of like that story that I said of my schizophrenic friend and the guy in the restaurant. They hear him talking and he sounds smart even though they don't understand what he's saying. It's just like, oh, it sounds cool. I like that there's the guy philosophing, even though none of it makes sense. And when you listen to Dianetics or even L. Ron Hubbard talk, and I did listen to a couple of his talks, you can dispute every single thing that he says. And he says stuff that doesn't make sense so often that you'd literally have to interrupt him every 2 seconds and give the alternate point of view or a better point of view. But you can't do that to a schizophrenic. You can't interrupt them like every 2 seconds. Then they won't, they'll lose their train of thought. Especially if he's like L. Ron Hubbard. He's the master in front of the room talking, giving his presentation. So, and so people, yeah, they just go there and they liked being in the presence, basically, of some guy who sounded like he knew what he was talking about, which made them feel smart for being in his presence. And then they'd play with the e-meter and do these things. But when they do the e-meter, he utilized all of these actual useful techniques that he learned from other people of mind control. So he'd be like, yeah, follow me, follow my religion. We believe in reincarnation, and there's all these little negative engrams, subconscious little things inside of ourselves that make us give us all the problems and that we have, and then we play with the e-meter, and then we'll get it. We'll get rid of all that for you, and make it all go away and make you perfect. And he had it very. He made it appear like he had it all figured out, which was another thing that lured people in. If you package something up in one neat package and promise everybody that you have it all figured out, and they don't have to do anything, they don't have to do any of their own thinking. You've got it all figured out for them, and all they have to do is this step and this step and this step, and then they get to basically be like a superhuman after that. It's very alluring. Because 60 years ago, there were so many, people were really ignorant, but there was all of this anticipation of all of a new utopia and new technology that was just around the corner. And so people were starting to get interested in new stuff, but they still didn't know how to think for themselves. And so along comes this guy who promises them that he's got all the answers, and it's people fall for it. It's really tempting for people, and I think he was really good at making people feel like he had some technique to convince people that he could fix their problems with their little e-meter. When I played with the e-meter, I played with it twice because I went into a Scientology center on Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles a few years ago. And then in 90 when I went with my friend, and it's a fascinating little machine. Like the guy, I remember here in Boulder, the guy would pinch me. And then he said, now while I was holding it, and then he said, okay, now remember me pinching it. And so I remembered him pinching me. And right when I remembered, the little meter came up. And I don't know exactly the mechanics of that, but it was amazing. And so L. Ron Hubbard must have figured out a way to have people do that, and then they go, oh wow, look at the e-meter, and then he says, yeah, and now I don't know, and somehow convinced, and I guess it helped them, it made them, it was like a new little toy to play with, and so he would transfer whatever addiction that they had into the addiction of playing with the e-meter, and he became like their guru, Cults, I think, are very alluring to people who just want to have this this kind of father figure who will take them by the hand and take care of everything so that they don't have to do any work themselves. Any individual, original thinking, and so he just tells them what to do, and then they do it, and it's easy, and they fell for it. And and so basically what Scientology is now is this whole set of beliefs and religion of this very structured philosophy that is founded off of from a schizophrenic crazy guy who was very selfish and didn't have any priorities straight, and so all these people fall into it, but there's nothing there. It's just a lie. And so the more people follow it and the more people live in that world, the deeper into insanity they go. And so basically he figured out a way, basically, is what he did, whether it was intentional or not. He figured out a way to make other people crazy just like him. He basically made the religion of, there's this schizophrenic guy who has all of these random thoughts about stuff that don't have anything to do with anything, and he's nuts. He figured out a way to make normal people crazy like him. And by using his ideas that he made up, and also established, and scientifically discovered mind control techniques, such as sleep deprivation and brainwashing through the use of that thing. This one woman was actually giving a demonstration of one of the experiments that they do in Scientology, where two people would sit in chairs facing each other. They're supposed to look at each other's eyes and not flinch or blink or anything. And whoever flinches and blinks first, or actually they wouldn't even have a competition between the two. There'd just be one person who's supposed to do it. And so he flinches or blinks, and then he fails, and then he tries to do it again, and he's supposed to be able to do that for X amount of time. And I guess the lady said that they would do it for days and days and days. And so and what I forgot to talk about, because this is pretty much the crux of it, is basically the religious techniques that they did were all basically designed to knock you down and try to make you feel like, all of the. And this is actually kind of related to taking truth that established truths from religions and then just twisting it to suit him. For example, Buddhism, or actually just common sense and philosophy. All the problems that we have in our life are originate from us and our own decisions. And like if you have a cigarette addiction, you don't have anybody to blame but yourself. And and so you're the only person who can set you free and all this stuff. And this is the thing that I noticed from Scientology myself, especially the last time I went there in Los Angeles, is, anything wrong with you or anything, any problem that arises is because of you. Something's wrong with you. And so he twisted that around though, and made that not something that would empower the people to fix themselves, but something that would empower him and make themselves feel like crap. And that's the experience that I got from the personality test that I took on Hollywood Boulevard. They gave me this personality test, and it was all of these questions, and it was really simple. It was something that anybody could have written. Like, have you ever felt, and apparently it was written by L. Ron Hubbard, have you ever felt, anxiety, are you happy 100% of the time, and I was like, and I'm honest, I'm like, well, yeah, I've felt anxiety before. Are you totally happy 100% of the time? No, and so then they look at it and they go, oh, see, look, you feel anxiety, so you need Scientology because you're anxious. Oh, and look, you're not happy all of it at a time, so like, oh, you're not happy and you're an anxious person and you're not happy. And so therefore, they're like, telling you that you've got all these problems, when you're like, wait, I don't have problems. It's just human nature to feel anxiety every once in a while, and not be happy all the time, and this, that, and the other thing. So they basically magnify. They put a big old magnifying glass on the negative, and then on you, and then blow it up out of proportion to make you feel worse and worse and worse and worse about yourself, and then tell you that they can fix you. And that's what they do with actual Scientologists. The Scientologist pays to take the program, to do this study and that study, and it gets and the more and they they get like a win, is what they call it, by having a realization about something, and then so then they have to do this next thing, and if it doesn't go wrong, then they get demoted, and they get they're basically they basically keep paying to be told that they've got all these new problems. It's hard to describe, but so yeah, it was basically a religion designed to drive you completely insane, and yeah, so it's like, if you go to their website, I checked out the Scientology website, and they have like the eight dynamics. The first dynamic is survival. So the first thing you want to do is survive. And then the second dynamic would be like group survival, or getting along with the group. And then the next dynamic was getting along as a country, and then getting along as a world. Stuff that anybody could make their own little list of stuff like that. Or you could get it's kind of like, basically what L. Ron Hubbard did is taking the 10 Commandments and then changing a couple of words on it, and then selling it as his 10 Commandments, that is his original idea. And if somebody ever comes up to him and goes, yeah, but this sounds really similar to the 10 Commandments of Moses, and he'll be like, what? Oh yeah, Moses, he didn't have it all right. It's almost like what I have, but you can see how there's other people out there who almost got it right, but thank God to everybody that I finally came along, as though it was totally his original idea, and oh look, just by chance there's somebody else who's almost as good as him, when he actually got the idea from them in the first place, and then twisted it around. And so it gives him a huge advantage, because he doesn't have to try as hard to come up with any original ideas if he just rips stuff off from all these different places and then repackages it. And this is one thing that people need to understand how it actually works, is that he had no conscience, and he didn't have any, he didn't flinch about looking you right in the eye and face and lying. He would lie right through his teeth. And most people don't even see how that could be a possibility, Like, most people are good, and they would only tell white lies, but they wouldn't straight up live an entire life of bold-faced lies, and become a master at saying everything that they say is to to make themselves look smart, and then to make you look stupid, and to just twist it all around, and be totally hypocritical, like say one thing when you actually mean the other. For example, he would say that that like the psychologists were trying to brainwash people, and he didn't support that, so he dropped out of the psychology, and is going to start a better psychology when he actually wants to brainwash people, kind of like that guy Jim Jones from Jonestown Massacre, that cult. He was telling people that the government tried to poison him, to kill him, when that's exactly what he did to all of the other people, those 1,000 people who died. L. Ron Hubbard, in those depositions in '82, L. Ron Hubbard's son was talking for an hour, and he said that 99% of L. Ron Hubbard said about himself was a lie, and that L. Ron Hubbard was a total drug addict. Like he would do cocaine and all kinds of different drugs, and get really high and then type, get his ideas and type. But one of his main things, and one of the big things about Scientology is that they're anti-drug, and that he never does drugs, but he's the biggest druggie of all. And so most people, and as far as like the advantage that you can gain by being a total hypocrite is well, I mean, he says that he'll teach people to think for themselves, and then he'll tell people to, so that he'll get them, and then but then, the first religious, technique that they do is to make it so that they can't think for themselves, and tell them that they're just strengthening their minds, because one of the things that they would do in Scientology is yell at you. They yell at you as loud as they can and try to get you to react, and you're supposed to not react. I guess hold the ear meter and not react at all. And when you can have somebody yell at you all day long and insult you and all this kind of stuff, and you don't react at all, then that means that you pass. And you're at the next level, because now you have mastery over space, time, what does they call it? Space, time, matter, and non-matter or something, And so he's like, okay, so you're going to become a superhuman. And when he says superhuman, like you can hear your hearing, you can hear somebody a block away as though they were right here, and you can have photographic memory and all this kind of stuff. So he's like, yeah, you listen to, when I yell at you and I abuse you, and you can not react at all, that means you have the mastery, because you're a master and you're very stoic. And little techniques like that can be fun to play with, but he would do it to people, I guess, and do through sleep deprivation, force them to stay awake, so that their brains, I guess he's like reprogramming people's brains, and so that by the time they're out of that little session, now their brains are exhausted and they're sleep deprived, and they get out, and then he can actually yell at them when they're not even in that session anymore, and they're still playing that game. They're still trying to be stoic and not react. And so now he's got basically, so he can be like, you piece of shit, you did it wrong. And he's like, oh, I did. I'm sorry, master. I will be better next time, because they think that is making them a stronger, better person by being obedient to him. But the big problem with where people went wrong, how people managed to get themselves brainwashed by him, is they weren't allowed to say anything. He was the last say on everything. He was the end all, and they couldn't argue anything. And if they did, they would they couldn't be part of the church or get kicked out. And so there was no room for any kind of actual philosophy. It was just listen to him, give his little, and and his excuse would be, oh, because look at all of these specific steps from this level to that level, and you have to follow it. Like, this is my idea. If you want to do it your way, then I guess do it your way. But But then, of course, it became really manipulative after that, and it got worse. I think the development of Scientology from the beginning until when he died, it became more and more sinister as it went along. He had to get more and more evil in order to survive. So basically, the history of L. Ron Hubbard is he. They said that he was making a penny a word from his different Pulp Fiction writings, and they figured he made about $10,000 total in all of his writing. So he was basically poor, and he was living off of his parents supporting him and his first wife supporting him. And then he was at one science fiction symposium, and he said to all the people, if you really want to make money, you have to start your own religion. And people remembered him saying that, but then Scientologists said it was Isaac Asimov who said it. But yeah, so he wrote this one self-help book, and nobody liked it. So then he wrote Dianetics, and it ended up making a lot of money, because he was using the e-meter, and he had all of this. He was selling courses on how to do the auditing and all this kind of stuff, where you play with the e-meter. And it started making him money, and he started doing really well. So then he made up his own little idea about becoming a superhuman by getting rid of all of these engrams. And in the book, it says that the engrams are all stored in the cells. But he says that we're all spiritual beings. So if we're all spiritual beings, and all of our negative encoding is stored, how could all of our negative encoding be stored in our cells? Our cells are our body. The negative encoding would be stored in our soul. And as you learn more and more about Scientology, I guess the final lesson is about that Lord Xenu, the intergalactic Lord Xenu, and all of the Thetans. There's all these alien spirits are inside of our bodies, and I guess inside of our souls, attached to our souls, which is totally contradicting himself. Because those thetans are attached to your soul, so how can those negative engrams be attached to your cells? Is it which one is it? Yeah, he said lots of silly things. Like I said, like every second you could pick out a inconsistency or something totally illogical. For example, he said that. Africans bang on bongo drums out of boredom, basically. He didn't put any value on any other culture at all. He would just say one thing about a culture and then make stuff up. He said that everybody in Europe since the time of the Greeks looked at aberration as a strength. Like, what the hell is that supposed to mean? So, ever since the time of the Greeks, being distorted and basically, like screwed up is a strength, is something that you're supposed to value in a society. Like, why? But he said stuff like that all the time. You can't. So it's bizarre how I don't know how that book got so popular. It's basically popular because it was like people reading somebody sounding smart to make themselves feel like they're smart, and by giving little ideas, I guess, in their heads, and they liked it. One thing that's good to point out to current Scientologists who believe in Scientology is that he was a Pulp Fiction writer. He was a science fiction writer. He made up stories and made up, fantasy worlds of lots of also bad situations in bad worlds. Like that movie Battleship Earth with John Travolta. He actually wrote that in 1984, after he had retired from Scientology. He wrote that, which is interesting. Why would some enlightened being, make up some ugly story of evil aliens. You'd think he would continue to, if he was so enlightened, he would continue to write, awesome philosophy books and do scientific experiments instead of write some ugly story. But yeah, so that's what he did. That's what his job was. It was making stuff up, and and if he was a true religious scholar, his whole life would have been dedicated to that. He would have been he would have been writing books like self-help books or history books, religious history books and stuff like that, instead of just do a career switch. So that whole Dianetics, it was just along the same lines of the same career of writing of all that made up stuff. Now he's just making up a story but saying that it's real. And yeah, so he came up with filled up. Okay, so yeah, basically I was saying that he was just a science fiction writer, and so he carried that science fiction stuff into his philosophy and was just making stuff up, and that appealed to a lot of people. If you go to the Scientology website right now and you see all the stuff that he invented, it's like this little fantasy world that he created that people gravitated to because he's creative and people gravitate to that stuff. And so basically the lesson is that that's what people like. People like structure. People like to be told that there's an answer, and all you have to do is do what you say, and then it'll all be okay for you, and you don't have to make any decisions yourself. Just follow the steps, and you'll get to be a super person and be better than everybody else. And people eat it up. People love it. So basically, back to L. Ron Hubbard. So he invented this whole system out of his ass, saying that it was all scientific and everything, and it was scientifically backed up when it wasn't. And so he invented a clear. And that's somebody who's supposed to get all of their little engrams cleared away from themselves, so that now they have they're the next stage of human evolution. And in the book of Dianetics, it says that the clear is the same difference from a regular human being as a human, is better than a regular human being, as a human being is better than a severely insane person. And so that's when he started talking about how a clear would have, because all of these little negative engrams and stuff are in your cellular level. So on your cellular level of your body is what inhibits you in every way imaginable, including physical ways. So you'll be able to hear footsteps from a block away as though it's here. You'll have photographic memory. You'll have mastery over space, time, and matter and everything. And he even said that it'll fix your eyesight. And he said, and in very many instances, one person has had to change their prescription on their glasses up to 5 times because of all of the engrams that they're getting rid of in their clearing process. So you can imagine how tempting it was for people. Oh wow, I'll be able to see perfectly from and all of my eyes not being able, because he said, yeah, because the eye can see, this is in the book, the eye can see perfectly right, but the problem is there's a misconnection between in the nerves between the eye and the brain, and that's because of these negative engrams that have developed on the cellular structure as you are developing. And he's making it all up, and he even made it up about the whole eyes. Like they said, the legend is that L. Ron Hubbard fixed his eyesight, and he fixed his injuries from the war and stuff. But then somebody saw a picture of him with glasses, and so people think he's some kind of god human. So that was the original idea, and so he went to some big demonstration of 5,000 people to demonstrate how he had a woman who was a clear. It actually shows the beginnings of this on YouTube, the beginning of this demonstration, and it was going to demonstrate how the woman who is now a clear has all these superpowers, and I guess he thought he could get away with it because she was studying physics, and of course he didn't tell anybody that, so he thought that she'd be able to answer the physics questions. So he was answering her different physics questions, like telling her once, and then she's supposed to remember it, but she couldn't remember a single one. She totally failed it, and then she couldn't even remember what color his tie was when he turned around. He turned around and said, "Okay, what color is my tie?" And she couldn't even remember that, and like all these people got up and left, and it was a total fiasco. And then they started talking trashy at him. So that's when he came up with the idea of, suppressive persons and potential trouble sources and all this kind of stuff, and the idea that if anybody insults you, then you attack them personally. And so never defend, only attack. And that's I guess that's a technique that bold-faced liars do. See, because like the bigger your lie is, and like the more angry you get if somebody accuses of you being lying and stuff, the more forceful you are, then the easier it is for stupid people to go, "Oh wow, you must be right because you're so angry, and now you're attacking the person. Oh, and wow, the person who said that about you, oh wow, they're a child molester. Like you're a child molester. You were in jail. Everybody knows you were in jail for 5 years, just 5 years ago. And they're like, oh, he was. They just make stuff up because people aren't used to somebody who can make stuff up like that. They don't think people are that bold-faced, that confident, that evil, that bad, But if somebody has no conscience and they will say whatever, and they'll lie through their teeth over and over again, then it's kind of like a numbers game, Then you're going to get more people who don't actually fact check and do their own homework, are just going to believe you because you're so confident in yourself. They don't know that you're totally lying. You're totally full of it. In an interview, he said that he'd only been married twice and his first wife was dead, but his first wife was still alive, and he'd been married 3 times. And they asked him if he did drugs or anything like that, and he said he never did drugs. But his son said he was a total druggie. But so you basically say whatever, and he would twist and stuff around. He would contradict himself, and if somebody confronted him, he would then, he was really good at just twisting it around to, just like a weasel. Like I could make anything up. I could be like, the reason that we can't remember our past lives is because we aren't nice enough to our mothers, and see, they are the ones who gave us birth, and when from the past life, you see. And somebody could be like, well, I never had a mother, and I can't remember my past life. So, oh, you never had a mother, but in your dreams, you dream of you having a mother, and you don't remember your dream, or something like that. Just making stuff up and as though you've thought about it. So he kept going after that incident. So he kept going, and he kept selling his idea, and they would just attack people who criticized him, but he continued to gain followers because he had a shameless marketing strategy. Just continuing his little sales pitch, and it ended up growing. But the amazing thing is that he got really rich and made a lot of money, and people go after him. And then he would move into these boats. He had these 3 ships that would go around, the Mediterranean because so that he wouldn't get in trouble. There were different countries who would got him and busted for doing crime. He did all kinds of crime. He was a criminal the entire way through his whole life. And a liar and a con artist. He he left his family in Seattle, his first family, because he just got bored with them, and he told everybody that they left him because he couldn't provide for them. Because he had injuries from the war, and they left him because they couldn't take care of him or something like that. But when he actually left them, he said that he got all these injuries in the war, but he never got any injury. He just went to the hospital once because he got sick or something, and then he wrote a long letter about his injuries so that he could get a pension. And so that's one thing he was living off of, his pension from the Army from his fake injuries. But then he moved down to California and moved into Jack Parsons' mansion. I guess he was a rich guy. He started the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and Jack Parsons was friends with Aleister Crowley and L. Ron Hubbard, and he was interested in the occult, and L. Ron Hubbard was too, and so I guess and science fiction. So he made friends with L. Ron Hubbard, but he gave a bunch of money to L. Ron Hubbard to buy some sailboats and sail them up to California and sell them. But he just took the money and went on a cruise on himself and totally took advantage of Jack Parsons. So he was just a con man the whole way. People see that works with people. It gives you a big advantage when you don't have a conscience like that, because most people, they don't, they can't lie like that. They're not just total liars. And I've met a few people like that. When you look back on it, they just make everything up. Like literally everything they say is a total lie, and there'll be elaborate lies too. If somebody gives you a really elaborate lie telling a whole story, you just believe them because you're not used to people completely making stuff up. But if you understand that that's what he's all about, then you can kind of understand how he got so many followers, because he was just giving all these promises. And so anyways, he would give these, he would use all these mind control techniques that he learned. And one guy who was an original follower of L. Ron Hubbard said that there was a psychiatrist woman who knew about mind control, and she studied the different Scientology things that he did, and she said that all the stuff he did was all mind control, and it was even more developed than the mind control that the U.S. government was experimenting with. He had it all figured out to a T. So basically, he would lure people into his little world for the promise of being a superhero, from doing all of these techniques that were supposedly scientifically discovered when he never did any science at all. So he's just luring stupid people. There's a certain group of people out there who want the easy way out, and they don't do any homework or background check or anything. Somebody tells them that they did the scientific experiment, and they just believe him, and they don't even do any background. One example of how ignorant people would just follow is there's this guy, Mark Headley, who was born into Scientology, and he was a Scientologist and escaped when he was like 28 or something. No, when he was 33. And he never read Dianetics. Dianetics is a regular sized book. It's only like 200 or 300 pages long. And in his entire life, he never read the Bible of the religion that he was in. And it's probably like that with a lot of the first generation followers of Scientology as well. Or maybe they read it once, or they felt like they didn't have to read it because he talked about it, and so it was kind of, to them, it was more of them getting to be part of this elite group of people who are going to be super by doing all of these little religious or techniques with the e-meter, but they didn't do any checkup or thinking for themselves. They just were like, okay, whatever, this is what you're saying sounds cool, so okay, and they do it, and so they get lured in by the promise of that, and then they get on the e-meter, and But what it is all mind control. It's all to brainwash you, and that's why people are kept awake even to this day with Scientology. And L. Ron Hubbard was the first one who did it. He'd keep people awake, and when you can keep somebody awake and not let them ever sleep, their brains are exhausted and they don't have any brain cells left over to think for themselves. And so it becomes like a survival thing where they just do what he says, and then they do the thing where he gets to yell at you, and you don't react to it. So that means that you're getting rid of your reactive mind, but what you're really doing is getting rid of your mind, and you're losing your own mind. And then now that your mind is empty from exhaustion, from sleep deprivation, and from not being able to react to anything, that you're now totally empty, and now he can insert his own beliefs and tell you, the promises of this and that, and that you guys are special and everybody else is different, and everybody else is evil, and don't listen to them, because they do brainwash techniques, and don't listen, and we are the only ones who don't, when they're being the ones being brainwashed. And so and then he tells them, gets them on the boat, and this is in the days before the internet, and so people who are already ignorant are now totally ignorant and not paying attention to anything else. And so he's pumping them in with all this information of all those other ideas that he robbed from other religions, which makes enough sense to keep them in and lure, and it's amazing. See the result that it had. It's hard to. I wish that these Scientologists who are coming out and telling about their experiences, I wish they would explain exactly how they got brainwashed and how it worked, because it seems like they don't even understand. Like this one woman, she was put in charge of 2 boats, and she witnessed L. Ron Hubbard throwing people off of his boat for punishment because they did something wrong, like they didn't clean the bathroom all the way, or they weren't fast enough in giving him his new cigarettes or something like that. And this one 55-year-old woman was thrown off the boat, and this is probably like 50 feet, like 30, 40 feet up or something, a big boat, with her hands tied behind her back and her feet tied together. And the woman said she was scared to death, thought she was going to die. Because how can you swim like that? And they threw her in, and then they picked her up out of the water in the little boats below. But okay, my card filled up. He oh my God, what the fuck was I talking? Okay, the battery died. Yeah, so, and nobody said anything, and so it's it's like, how could that happen? Because the people beforehand, and the stuff that happens to this day, where people refuse to talk to their family. Jason Begay, the actor, was saying that, when people, before they get into Scientology, and if you were to tell them that they would get brainwashed to the point where they would refuse to talk to anybody and their family members ever again, they would tell you they would never do that, but they end up doing it. So I guess my question to an ex-Scientologist, first generation, is how could that happen to you? How did you actually get brainwashed like that, and what were the techniques? So I guess it's just this. It's kind of hard to imagine how it could happen if it doesn't happen to you, if it hadn't happened to you, but somehow it's possible to just exhaust the brain by repeating these actions over and over again. By just sitting there and letting them yell at you and not doing anything, and then listening to one guy talk about his ideas over and over again, where you can't say anything, and so nobody's ever allowed to say anything, and so now they can't even say anything to anybody else, because if you say something to somebody else, then they can report you, and they're supposed to report you, and then you get reported, so then you get demoted, and and all while they still think that it's good and it's special because they came into it originally believing that they were going into some special new religion that's better than the whole world is messed up. And see, that's another thing, how he took advantage of something and twisted it around, because the world is messed up and screwed up, and if you're eccentric and different and you come up with a new idea, then you will get, slammed down by society and stuff. And so I guess he just had a masterful way, because he had no conscience and he just lie. He would just exploit that. Oh, you're a little bit different, huh? You want to fit in, huh? Well, come into our group. We'll let you fit in with us, and we understand how that nasty world out there, all those bad people, and so now they're in, and then so people, and then they make friends, and they're in their little cult, which is also kind of like a luring in itself, and kind of like a drug, like an addictive drug in itself, when you get to be with a bunch of people who are like their little clique, and they all get to just get off on being better than everybody else and special, and so then if you leave, now you're not special, and you're shunned by the group, and like peer pressure, and it keeps them in. And so fast forward to the present, these people have kids, and then they raise the kids in this world. So now you've got a whole second generation of people who were born into it, and so which makes it even harder to get your mind out of that mindset if you're born into it. So I think he got the first generation people to get brainwashed because they were already a little bit wacky, and then their kids aren't necessarily going to be wacky, but they're born into it, and little kids are really impressionable. And so if you raise a kid up in that world and they don't know any of the outside world, because all of their friends are believing the same thing there and in the same group, and they're not allowed to communicate with the outside world because they have their own schools, then it's just really hard to you can be miserable, and you still don't know what the problem is. You think it's your problem because that's the whole religion. Like, any problem is your problem. It stems from you, and you can it's actually completely obvious how crazy it is to anybody just by going to the Scientology YouTube channel. It's amazing how people fall into Scientology. So the people who still go into Scientology these days are people who are really messed up, and they can't see the difference. They see how it's different and its own little parallel world reality in there, and they like it. They like going into a little parallel reality because it makes them feel special, but they're not smart enough to see how it's a fantasy world. But it's clear to any normal person. If you go to the Scientology YouTube channel, you see the Scientology advertisements for their religion. It's just so watered down. It's kind of like, it reminds me of if you're seeing a science fiction movie, and then within the movie you have like a crazy world within the movie, and the crazy world would have a crazy propaganda commercial within the movie. And so obviously in the movie, if they're going to make a crazy propaganda movie in the movie, they even make it even more more silly. If you're going to make a commercial for some fantasy thing that's wacky, a commercial made to be in a movie, you're not going to make it the same commercial as a commercial in real life. You're going to make it campy, really campy, and silly. Especially if it's some weird science fiction movie where the world's all screwed up. You're like it's almost like you're making fun of the world. You're making it's all a joke, and that's the vibe that you get off of Scientology commercials. It's like they're not even serious. It's like it's some kind of out of some fantasy world, You know, like they have this one they have all these anti-drug videos, and they have the one of this girl, and it's like, you think you can party all night on cocaine? No, you can't. And at the beginning, it shows her. She's all, and everywhere she goes, she's just like, and then by the end of the night, her friends take her in the hospital, and she's like, and falls down, and it's like, but that's not how it's really like. If you OD on cocaine, you're not going to be like, crying in the hospital, You're going to be like crazy yelling at people and stuff. And, you know, um, and, yeah, but the people talking about the drugs in those, oh my God, they are so fucked up, dude. If you listen to the voices of the people talking, like who are now Scientologists, and Scientology helped them get off drugs, and they're talking about the drugs that they were on, like they sound like they're still on drugs. They talk like this. They're like, I used to be on cocaine, but it totally screwed me up. I'm not on it anymore. And it's like, whoa, like, are you on? Did they jack you up on drugs now? That's really weird. And yeah, there's lots of commercials like that on there. Um, but and I mean, it's surreal. They have this one commercial on there that they have this building where they're restoring all of the ancient manuscripts and ancient videos of L. Ron Hubbard, and and so and it's all these people who, like L. Ron Hubbard is God, and they're reconstructing, like, I mean, even like, they're getting so carried away that, now they're going to start to get some of these like notes he wrote on toilet paper about some science fiction book he was writing, and they're going to take that as truth, and make it like another Bible. And like everything, he's like a messiah. When they have an opening of a new org and stuff, they have a big rope tying down next to where they're standing, like pretending that they're next to a ship. L. Ron Hubbard was a chain smoker, and so even though he's against drugs, and so now in Scientology, they believe that cigarettes are good or healthy, and so they all chain smoke to try to emulate L. Ron Hubbard, and yeah, I mean, and the more you learn about it, the crazier it gets. All of the new orgs they have, the new buildings that they have an L. Ron Hubbard office that has everything in it, all, like the pins, and they even made a giant mansion somewhere, and they clean his clothes regularly. All the clothes he used to have, they clean them regularly, and they keep the whole mansion just up to par with maids and everything, because he said that he was going to return, like on a certain date, on like 1999 or something, but he never said how he was going to return, like if he was going to step off a spaceship or his body was going to materialize. But they didn't even ask it. And he never came. But then and some people left when that happened, but other people stayed, and yeah, it's insane. But so I don't know. It's kind of like, all these people in Scientology, it's just like there's a certain kind of person in the world who is pre-existing, who wants to be led like a little, by the hand, and not be told, not have to make any decisions for themselves, and so they can work really hard, and so that they get some special reward by getting to have all of these superpowers. But the sad thing is that they don't even, the people in the Sea Org, who's the group of the elite workers, they don't even get, they join it because they can't afford to pay for all of the expensive services. So they join it, and they become slaves. They have to work 100 hours a week. They get like 3 and 4 hours of sleep a night. And one girl said she was up for 72 hours straight, and then they can't wash their clothes, and they're promised all this stuff before they go in, and then they don't get it. Like they're told they're gonna get their dental, and they don't get dental, and so they get paid like $9 a week, but then they can't get contact lenses paid for them, so they have to buy it for themselves with the $9 a week. This guy Mark Headley grew up in the Sea Org in Scientology, and he was in the Sea Org for like 16 years or something, and getting so in 16 years working 9 hours 100 hours a week and getting like 1 day off a year or something, basically a slave. He made a grand total of $29,000, and when he left, they gave him a bill of $60,000. It's called a freeloader bill. You were a freeloader, and he got a because for services he got, but he wasn't even given that many services. Like he was getting charged like $100 an hour for the services that he got, for the auditing that he got, like once a week for an hour, when the rest of the time he was working for 15 cents an hour. It's just completely, the nerve, the gall is unbelievable. And but that's all because of their current leader, David Miscavige. There was this guy who was interviewed, who was one of the original followers of Scientology on the ship, and he knew David Miscavige from the very beginning. And he said that his impression of David Miscavige didn't even know about Scientology, and he wasn't even interested in it. He just liked being in the cult, and he was one of the go-to guys, the errand boys for L. Ron Hubbard, and that David Miscavige gave him the impression that he was just this like a punk, like he was violent and like nasty and mean, and was just there because it was a cool place for a thug to be. And kind of like in that movie The Master, Joaquin Phoenix's character was basically it was a fictional, the whole thing was fiction based on Scientology, but Philip Seymour Hoffman was L. Ron Hubbard, and Joaquin Phoenix's character was basically David Miscavige, just this, stewing guy who didn't really understand anything of what he was saying, but liked being there because he liked being around some guy who seemed like he knew what he was talking about, and then he took over because he just liked the power. And the girl Jenna Miscavige, David Miscavige's niece, said in an interview that she thinks she doesn't know if David Miscavige even believes in Scientology. She says maybe he doesn't even believe it. I don't know. I think he just does it for the money, for the power, and yeah. So it's weird. Yeah, but anyways, I'm kind of jumping around here. But as far as going to the Scientology channel, it's weird, yeah, because how they just, L. Ron Hubbard had all these crazy man ideas, like he was against the psychiatric world, and L. Ron Hubbard's son said it was because he saw them as competition, like he robbed these ideas, he stole these, he was a hack, he stole the ideas from the psychiatrists, okay, the whole idea about subconscious, he's like, oh, subconscious, okay, let's call them engrams then. And therapy, they do therapy where you ask them questions, Socratic questions, and then you tell them what their problem is. Okay, yeah. We'll do that with the e-meter. And, he just stole their ideas, twisted it around, and then sold it as himself. And so he talked trash about the psychiatrists because the psychiatrists were talking trash about him because he wasn't real science. He was saying that he was doing scientific experiments and this, that, and they were saying, what? You're full of shit. And so then he, of course, don't defend, attack. So then he attacked the entire industry, out of his delusions of grandeur, but also because they were like, competition. If these people with problems didn't go to the psychiatrist because he turned them away from them, then they would go to him and he'd make the money off of them. And so, so basically, L. Ron Hubbard is basically kind of like somebody who never believed in anything. L. Ron Hubbard probably never believed in anything that he taught. Didn't believe in reincarnation. Didn't believe in the engrams or anything. He didn't believe in God, didn't believe in any of these cultural ideas that we've had since the beginning of time. He was just totally pessimistic and thought it was all bullshit. So then he was like, all right, well, if they're all full of shit, then I'll be full of shit too and make stuff up. And one of his original followers said that they busted him. He actually admitted it was bullshit. There was somebody on a ship, people on the ship who wanted to leave, and he would tell everybody, and this is what Scientologists say, if you want to leave Scientology, it's because there's something wrong with you, or because there's a suppressive person. And you can actually see this on the Scientology YouTube channel. It's actually one of the more recently uploaded videos, what's a suppressive person? And you look at the video and it goes, and it says, on right there on the Scientology YouTube channel, it says, if there's anything wrong in your life, whether it's you're an alcoholic, or even according to L. Ron Hubbard, if you have bad eyesight, or you're stressed out about something, it's because there's a suppressive person in your life, So why are you sad today? And so for a Scientologist, it wouldn't be like, why are you sad today? It'd be like, who are you hanging out? Who's making you sad today? And so, yeah, it's this whole so with Scientology, part of the brainwash is you can't hang out with anybody from the outside world. You can only hang out with Scientologists, because if somebody from the outside world, they're automatically gonna be a suppressive person and going to give you all of these problems. So it's like, escape from all of your problems. You have problems. I do have problems? Yeah, you have lots of problems. To get rid of your problems, you join us. Oh, okay, well, let's see what you guys have. And then you join them, and then they're like, yeah, you have this problem, I do, yeah, and it's really bad, okay. So you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. Motherfucker, shut up, you have to clean this and clean that. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Oh, you didn't show up early enough. Now you have to run. So they have all these, like in the real world, in a good world, you would discipline somebody, and train a kid to be a good person or an animal by positive reinforcement, Like if the dog does your trick, you give him a bone, If the kid washes the dishes, then you give him, you let him watch TV that night or something. Well, in Scientology, you don't get rewarded for doing the right thing. You do the right thing because you join the army, and you have to, be part of Scientology, who's going to fix the whole world. Like, this whole world is screwed up, and we're all barreling towards disaster and hell, and they're the only people who can fix everything. And so, so aren't you going to thank us for allowing you in our world? And now you're part of the army, and you work and you work and you work, and like, there's no thanks at all. And then if you complain or you say anything, or you mess up in any way, then you get punished. So instead of positive reinforcement, now it's negative reinforcement. So people just keep getting punished and punished and punished and beaten down, and until they either go crazy, or they become totally brainwashed and they beat other people down. It's like this cycle that is created. Like the alcoholic child beater then grows up to beat his child, then grows up to beat his child, and that's what Scientology is. So it's totally hierarchical. It's an autocracy. There's David Miscavige is the boss, and he tells everybody how it is, and then they tell the people below them how it is, who tell them below them how it is, and so they get brainwashed and thinking that's how it is, and so it's this, and then it turns into this survival thing. So that you have to and this is actually something that you can look in history and see over and over again, where people, informants. In the French Revolution, they had informants, and all you had to do is say one bad thing about one person, like he's a royalist, and he'd get his head chopped off, and they killed 10,000 people in like 10 months for that way. And even with McCarthyism in America, Lloyd Bridges is a communist, and so then he gets blackballed. Just off of the rumor that he's a communist, this is during Scientology, and so people were kind of, I guess, had that mentality going on, and so, yeah, it creates this world of people, like, basically trying to be the least evil person, the least in trouble. And so, yeah, they have these project rehabilitation forces. Oh, no, or RPF. I don't know what that stands for, but where, yeah, you get punished. And when you get punished, now you can't talk to anybody and you have to run. Everywhere you go, you have to run. And then if you screw up in that, then you get thrown in quarantine and you can't talk to, you have to be like thrown into a small dark room for days. And there's so many stories of people interviewed who were thrown in to these like dark rooms for like 2 days and given, you know, food and buckets and having to poop and pee in the rooms where they are, right on the floor. Even L. Ron Hubbard did this. There was a 4-year-old kid who L. Ron Hubbard had like tapes, some kind of telex or whatever, and the little kid accidentally chewed a telex or something. So he punished the kid by having him thrown into the chain locker of the boat, where the chain comes up and goes and falls into this like dark metal room that the whole bottom, like the bottom foot of it, is just water with mud that had dripped down from the chain. And the kid had to, this 4-year-old kid had to sit on there for 2 days and 2 nights as punishment inside of this chain locker, pooping and peeing in there and just given enough water to survive. And people could hear him crying and begging to come out the whole time, and nobody did anything. And they did stuff like that to other people too, throwing him in the chain locker. They had some guy thrown in a boiler room and he couldn't get out. And they have this double wide trailer and Scientology like ranch they have somewhere where people were locked in there for like 3 years or something, and they can't even escape. And if they try, you know, they get thrown back in physically. And if you go to their different Scientology areas, they have these giant spikes that stick out of these fences that are razor sharp, and if you tried to that face inwards, and if you try to get away, you know, you would get injured. And there's lots of YouTube videos of people doing that. And when people leave, the people chase after him and try to bring him back. And there's actually one YouTube video of Marty Rathbun. He was the number 2 guy in Scientology for a long time. And his old friends went to his house and tried to, they're called like the squirrel unit or whatever, who tried to get him back in. And he filmed it. And they ambushed him at a airport once, and they were talking, and he actually filmed the guy like, "Come on, Marty, come back. Don't you want to be with us? What about your eternal life? What about eternal life? Don't you want your eternal life?" So I guess in their religion, they don't get their eternal life unless they're a Scientologist. Let me talk about the whole Xenu thing, because what you get, the final secret, which you have to pay for to learn, is there's this guy named Xenu who is this galactic warlord in some planet, and his the bunch of planets there were getting overpopulated. So he decided that he was going to transfer all the people from that planet to Earth. So he created he injected all the people with and you can hear the story. L. Ron Hubbard actually saying it. It's recorded on YouTube with some kind of serum, which put him to sleep. And then he threw him on these DC-10s, spaceships that looked exactly like DC-10s, except they were propelled by rockets. And then they came to the Earth, and they stored all of their souls into a volcano, and then they blew up the volcano with a nuclear bomb, and all the Thetans escaped. All these souls of people escaped. And so all the souls of the people from the overpopulated planets escaped, and now they're flying around, you know, the Earth, and they install themselves in human bodies, in our bodies, and that's what creates the engrams. That's what creates all of the problems that we have, which I guess give you the bad eyesight and the hearing and the biases and the depression, whatever problem you have. It's the souls of people from other planets inside of you. And so that's what the auditing does, is it gets rid of the Thetans, and you can get rid of, you know, thousands of Thetans. And so you pay a certain amount of money, exorbitant fee, to get rid of the, you know, more and more Thetans. And then, you know, of course there's always more Thetans to get rid of. And So more money you have to pay into it, and and I guess that's what caused some people to leave. But see, I guess people can't have trouble leaving because they're so insulated. Their kids go to special Scientology schools, and they all they only hang out with other Scientologists. That when they want to leave, it's a really big deal because now they're not going to have any friends, and so that's what they're told. Like, well, you're not going to have any friends. What now? And then you have to sign non-disclosure agreements. And anyways, they break every rule in the book with all the slave labor. They have all the, they don't have to pay for it, and they charge exorbitant fees for their. So we'll see. What I was going to say, Joaquin Phoenix's character in the book, it was kind of similar to David Miscavige, but also Joaquin Phoenix's in the book is a counterpart to in Scientology. It's when they recruit people who are poor, and may have problems. So then they recruit them to just become workers for Scientology, to join the Sea Org, So you may not have money to donate, but you have your time, your life. And so, yeah, they basically make, so that's how they make all their money, is by having all this free labor, free workers, maintaining the buildings and doing all this. And then they get the money from the rich people and the normal people paying tons of money for their courses. And it's non-taxed because they got their tax-exempt status by turning it into a religion by using all the money that they made before on, I guess, harassing all these IRS agents and creating litigation. L. Ron Hubbard said that you would, anybody who detracts from who detracts from Scientology, you don't defend, attack. You attack them through litigation, but not to try to win, because you can't win because it's all crazy, but by keeping, I guess, having court date after court date so that the other person just runs out of money. And that's a problem with our court system. We need to fix that. But I guess the U.S. government just ran out of money and they couldn't do it anymore, so they gave up and gave them the tax-exempt status. But if they hadn't have given up, Scientology would have died because they had $1 billion in back taxes that they didn't pay, and so now they didn't have to pay it, and so now, yeah, they don't. So they have the slave labor. They have all the people paying too much over and over again, giving all their money until they're broke, and then when they get broke, they leave, and they don't have to pay taxes on anything, and so they can get really rich. One woman, Karen de la Carriere, a defector who knew L. Ron Hubbard, said that they have $1.5 billion dollars stocked up, and so that's how they can keep generating more clients by having a really heavy, well-funded advertising campaign going on, with all the commercials and the calls and the buildings, and putting on this front like they're really successful, which lures more people in with all their buildings. And but one really interesting thing about Scientology is to speculate where it's going, what's gonna happen to it in the future, because see, now with internet and with all the people talking trash about them, all these people are defecting. The people who didn't get anything and realized it was all a scam. Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. I got sidetracked. L. Ron Hubbard said to one of his original followers that see, if you want to defect, then what they say in Scientology is there's something wrong with you. If any problem it is, it's all you. And so now you have to pay more to get more of your, more engrams taken away and more therapy. And so if somebody wants to leave the boat, it's their fault. But L. Ron Hubbard said to a couple of these guys, they said, hey, yeah, when these people want to leave, it's because they're unhappy. They're unhappy here and they want to leave. But this is our secret. Don't tell anybody, because what I tell other people is because there's some problem with them that they have. And so they're like, oh, really? Wow, you just admitted that it's all bullshit. It's all a lie. People. So what it'll be interesting what'll happen in the future with Scientology. because they have so much money backed up that, and their leader is total psychopath. Will do anything, to keep himself in power and to keep the money going, and will make up lies. And he's a total liar, just like L. Ron Hubbard. He gets up in front of the group and says, and lists all of these statistics. We opened up 52 orgs. We have 500 new books sold and 500 articles and 53,000 hours of auditing this year, better than ever before. We're opened up in 4 more countries. And he's just totally lying. But see, that's his advantage. That's the advantage that a liar has, is because if you advertise that you're successful, you're going to attract more people. But if you're lying, then it's like you're cheating, because now you're saying that you're successful when you're not. When an honest person would be like, "Oh no, we're not successful," then people aren't going to follow you, and so he's cheating. But so anyways, the interesting thing of what might happen in the future in Scientology, if David Miscavige isn't deposed or thrown in jail, is that and he's totally autocratic, as autocratic now as he ever was, because all the top level people have defected. Marty Rathbun, who was number 2, defected. Mike Rinder, who was number 3, defected. All those other people. So all the people within Scientology are all new people, which means that they're totally subordinate. If you're new to it, you're not going to be as you're not going to want to stand up to David Miscavige as much. I mean, he's not going to beat you like he beat them, because they're not going to, because they're they know that yeah, I don't think he'll be able to get away with it as much now. But the thing is, if he's got $1.5 billion stocked up all over the place, he could use that money for the rest of his life, and use that money to make it seem like they're successful. So he could be hemorrhaging money, he could be losing $1 million a year, but he could be using all that money that he's losing, making it appear that he's successful. And so Scientology will still have their website, they'll still have their YouTube channel, they'll still have their buildings that you can't look in and see that they're totally empty. And a lot of the people, all these defectors, say that when they go in the building, it's totally empty, there's nobody there. And that when they have these grand openings of the buildings and their big parties outside, they actually pay people to go, to make it appear that there's more people than there are. When they get their books in the bestseller, they buy up the books and then sell them again and buy them up again. So it's all this big facade. And so, I mean, if they have that much money stocked up, this could go on for a long time. And then, of course, when you have this facade of success, they could be recruiting people and still make money back. I mean, it won't be sustainable, but they could retard them running out of money for a long time by continuing to recruit ignorant people who don't do their homework and don't do their and don't think for themselves and just fall into that whole the whole world is bad, you follow us and you'll be okay thing. And then they'll pay all their money into it, and it could keep going, and this could continue for a while. Scientology could stay in business, steadily getting weaker and weaker and losing more and more money, but with all the money that they have stockpiled, it could be one of these things that everybody hates except for the people who are in it. And it's just this weird cult, this like parallel universe of. One really interesting thing about Scientology is it is kind of like a parallel universe. When you have these weird science fiction, like movies of these like Armageddon type futures, like apocalyptic futures, or like autocratic parallel universes of like how the world could be if the world was totally autocratic, like that movie V for Vendetta with Natalie Portman, or like 1984, by George Orwell. Some of these kinds of worlds. Well, that's Scientology. It actually exists in this world. It's kind of like taking a little piece of a parallel universe that's totally autocratic, where nobody can think for themselves, and bringing it in our world as a reality in our world right here. And it's right here in front of us. It exists. But it'll continue to exist because they have all that money to keep it perpetuating. But yeah, and I mean, that's the feeling that I get when I watch these Scientology YouTube videos. I'm just like, oh my God, this is so creepy. And when you hear the songs, L. Ron Hubbard, after he retired from Scientology and he was hiding because he was in trouble and he was going to get arrested if they found him. That's when he wrote Battleship Earth and like Spaceship Earth or whatever. That's when he started writing music and songs, and you hear them in their in the Scientology advertisements on YouTube. You can actually hear him, and John Travolta and somebody else, I think Kirstie Alley, like sang part of them. They're the creepiest songs. Oh my God, it's like, Road to freedom, the bridge to freedom. So it's all, and these people, they're taking it seriously, and it's like they're all singing it, thinking that they're special and they're the only people in the whole world who are going to get to go to heaven and live forever. And so, but they're not thinking. It's like, well, yeah, okay, they're Thetans, they're eternal beings, and they get to live forever. So what do they think is going to happen to other people? Are they going to reincarnate too, or reincarnate into some evil world? But you don't know, because you can't have a conversation with them. All they can do, they it's like what they can say and what they can't say. And if you ask them the wrong thing or confront them on anything, then they'll just walk away. There's an interview by of some news show interviewing the spokesperson for the Celebrity Center, this guy named Tommy Davis. He's the son of Ann Archer, who's the one who played the wife of Harrison Ford in Clear and Present Danger. And they asked him about Xenu, and he's like, I'm not going to talk about that. Don't ask me about that. And then he stood up and he walked away from the interview. So, you can't have a two-way conversation with a Scientologist. And but I guess the real reason he walked away is because what they believe, because what Ron Hubbard said, whatever he says is the truth, is that if you believe that if you were told about Xenu, then you're going to die of pneumonia. And see, that's another control technique that L. Ron Hubbard and the Scientologists of today uses, that if you get a sickness, it's because there's some problem with you. And Scientologists are dropping dead left, right, and center from all this stuff, from pneumonia and all this stuff. But it's inflicted by them because they don't live in the real world. They don't follow the rules of the real world. For example, they have this boat called the Free Winds, and they had this guy named something Woodburn, who was one of these Scientologists, and he was brought in to be the engineer. He was a professional engineer to help design this Free Winds boat. It's this giant cruise ship, and which they were going to have their special classes, their advanced level courses on, because you can only open up to learn that special information when you're way out at sea, when you're not polluted by the polluted consciousness of the regular people, which has a lot of validity to it, which L. Ron Hubbard probably read in some esoteric scripture somewhere and then twisted it around and decided that he was going to use it for himself, right? So it kind of lures people in because subconsciously we know that it makes sense. But he says it's his idea, so, oh, wow, you must be smart. You came up with the original idea yourself. But the real reason why they do that is because he lived on the boat because he was going to get sued or thrown in jail if they found him, He wasn't allowed to carry on his services on land from all the scams that he'd been busted for. And so he had to do it on the boat. But anyways, they have this boat. And they brought the engineer on there. And he was looking around, and the whole boat was infested with asbestos all over the place. And he said, and it was an old boat, right? So there's asbestos loose falling out. And he's like, you guys, this asbestos stuff is going to give people lung cancer. We have to get this asbestos out, but it was going to be expensive. And so they said, no, no, no. L. Ron Hubbard says the asbestos thing, it's all conspiracy theory. It's the WOG world making that up. And so we believe him, right? So they don't pay attention to science at all, ever. And so that's what they did. They got a new crew in there to, I guess, do some work on it, and they refused to do the work on it, and they left after a few days because they were scared to death of dying of asbestos. And and they were telling him to design the ship in all these really impractical ways. Like they wanted to have the kitchen on a completely different level as the restaurant, and he's like, "You don't do that. You put the kitchen next to the restaurant." And they're like, L. Ron Hubbard says no. He wanted to have, or Marty, or whatever, the fucking David Miscavige. He wanted to have the restaurant here, and he wanted to have the kitchen there. And so it's just totally not streamlined, not logically set out at all, and a pain in the ass to function a ship like that. But it doesn't really matter to them because they have the slave labor to run around and make it work. But the guy's like, dude, anyways, so they ended up not taking the asbestos out. And so all these people lived on that ship and for years and hung out on the ship. And it's this old ship that's crickety. And so there's just this loose asbestos flowing all over the ship, and people are inhaling. And so all these people drop dead of cancer. And lots and lots of Scientologists have dropped dead of cancer. And so and also pneumonia. They get pneumonia. And then they also don't believe in science, not just psychiatrists, but actual science. They don't, because they don't believe in drugs, and also they're notoriously cheap, so they don't pay for the drugs, and so people are dying because of just lack of treatment. There's this 27-year-old kid who died last summer, the summer of 2012, because he got pneumonia, because he was living in some building sequestered. They said they had like 40 people stuffed in one room where they weren't allowed to like wash their clothes for weeks at a time, and it was just disgusting. Like you almost fall over from the nasty smell of it. And it's not just the boat that they're not maintaining, it's these buildings or fire hazards. They said one room, the whole thing was filled up to the top with old like boxes of books, and they never revamped the water system, the fire suppression water system, and if anybody lighted a match, everybody in the building would die. And so this kid got pneumonia, and they didn't treat him, and then they pumped him full of an anti-anxiety drug, and it killed him. And he was the son of Karen de la Carriere, who has her own YouTube channel called Escape from Surviving Scientology, but he was the son of the main spokesperson, like the president of the Scientology Church. In '95, Phil Donahue had the Scientology spokesperson on, and it was this old guy who was like totally defending Scientology and everything. It was his son who ended up dying at the age of 27 last summer. So everybody, even the most high level people, are getting destroyed by it. Because Scientology, I mean, here's another example of how hypocritical they are. They preach that they're against drugs, but they use drugs to, that's another technique of mind control that they do. Not just sleep deprivation, not just these techniques of screaming at you and making you like a zombie who will do whatever the person above you says, so that then you yell at the person below you so that they do whatever you say. And so then they all fight each other and they all stress out. And that's why they fight each other all the time, fist fight each other. It's because they're so stressed out. And then they have these hierarchical battles. Like, wait, I am hierarchical than you. No, wait, I'm higher than you. Fuck you. Fight. And they beat each other up. But yeah, the other technique they use for mind control is drugs. They pump you full of this drug called chloral hydrate, which is used to as a sedative for anxiety for people who are like really freaking out. But if you take too much of it, it'll actually kill you, and that's what Anna Nicole Smith died of. And that's what this woman Lisa McPherson died of. They have their main base where Scientology was based out of in Clearwater, Florida. It's not where David Miscavige and these guys live. They're off in their like highfalutin ranch, living the large life. out there, but where Scientology like headquarters is and where the original headquarters is in Clearwater, Florida. And they said 24 people have died on the Clearwater, Florida premises from, cancer or, a neglect from pneumonia or from overdoses from these drugs. They use chloral hydrate, benzene. Is that the one? No, chloral hydrate. That kid Jench's, his name is Andrew Jench. He died of another one of these drugs, and then they have another drug that they just pump you full so that you turn into a zombie. And this lady, Lisa McPherson, back in like '96 or something, at the age of 36, died of chloral hydrate overdose, and because she refused to eat and she went psychotic. They found her. I guess they found her running down the streets of Clearwater naked, and so they brought her into the psychiatric ward to try to bring her back because she was saying that she could talk to animals and she had superpowers and all this kind of stuff. And they got her to, her Scientology friends got her to sign herself out, and they brought her to the Scientology place, and they had her sequestered because I guess now she was declared a suppressive person because she went crazy. So now they're going to punish her. So for 17 days, and she was refusing to eat, and they just kept giving her more of this chloral hydrate to calm her down, to make her less crazy. And it's just their own little world. They're not paying attention to science and common sense. And so when they realized, when she was like comatose, they realized that, okay, we're not going to make her better, so let's take her to a hospital. So they drove her like 3 hours away to a hospital where they knew of a Scientology doctor, even though there were a bunch of hospitals next to her. By the time they got there, she was already dead. And they have pictures of her dead, and she was like, had bug bites all over her. She had bruises all over her. And she had this look on her face like, so yeah, that's kind of one of the things that they do is it's actually designed. And they think that it's this religious, religious practice that they're doing to get rid of the evil thetans, the evil souls attached to their souls and the engrams to make themselves superhumans. But what they're really doing is brainwashing themselves and making themselves more and more crazy. It actually makes you more and more crazy and makes you more and more doubtful of yourself. Because see now you're not making yourself better, you're actually making yourself worse, and then you blame yourself for making yourself worse, not Scientology. So then you blame yourself more, blame yourself more, and then you're on the drug and you're doing this, and you're in this hole, and you're not happy, and then you blame it for yourself, so you're in this little hell. You're literally in hell, and you're like, and this one woman, another woman who survived, says that she said that she thought she was talking to the animals, psychically communicating to the animals, and tomatoes and potatoes, vegetables, and PVC pipes, and having her own like ideas about them. The PVC pipe has its own purpose. So they're basically turning them into schizophrenics, paranoid schizophrenics, just like L. Ron Hubbard was, and what non-medicated schizophrenics was. I guess it's possible to turn a normal person into basically what a non-medicated schizophrenic was, where your brain is now, through sleep deprivation, the drugs, the brainwashing techniques from them yelling you, the hierarchical dictatorial structure where you're never allowed to think for yourself. You can't express any doubt about anything or else you get punished. So that now your mind is just, you don't know which way is up and which way is down. You don't know what's right and what's wrong, and you're so confused that now you just start grabbing for straws, man. Just grabbing for anything to try to make sense of anything and making stuff up. Like, okay, well, I'm supposed to be superhuman now. Okay, I can see my past lives. I can talk to the desk. The desk will be alive. The desk is a person. It has its own purpose. This crazy stuff. You go nuts. And and another proof of how L. Ron Hubbard was all full of shit and on drugs is that L. Ron Hubbard gave his oldest son, who defected in '59, gave him like way too much of this some kind of like laughing gas or something, or acid or something. Maybe it was LSD. Um, oh no, he didn't believe in LSD. They're against LSD and marijuana because they know that it makes it so that you can't be brainwashed. You're going to actually think out of the box, and so that's actually one reason why they're against that stuff. But yeah, he gave him on some kind of drug, and he went into a hallucinogen. He's like, yeah, I was a clam in a past life. I was a clam, and I was biting on the rock, because clams bite on rocks and then turn them into pearls, and that's why my tooth hurts. And so that's actually a belief in Scientology even today, and maybe it's even written in Dianetics, although I don't remember, but that human beings, when we have tooth problems, it's not because you eat too much candy and you got a cavity, but it's because 70 billion years ago or whatever, we were all clams, and we injured our teeth by biting on the rocks, and now that's doctrine. And so he got the idea from his son. So it's not from exhaustive scientific experiments, or even from L. Ron Hubbard's special knowledge. And L. Ron Hubbard did tell people that he got his special knowledge from magically from out there. And I saw one of his speeches. He's giving a speech in a lecture, and he's like, "Oh look, I just got a download. Oh, they just told me yes, and then this." And so and he had this, and he was really charismatic. He was always joking, and people were always laughing. It was creepy how people would laugh at everything he would say, like everything. Like he was Mr. Think out of the box. Like the only person in the world who knew everything and so he got to joke and make fun of other people. And he was all joking, but his jokes were really derisive against other people. He'd be like, oh, those dirty little Chinese people. It's dregs of society. I heard him actually say that in one of his interviews. Dregs of society, of this Homo sapiens. So then I came over back to the Western world, who were also dregs of society, and everybody's laugh. Ha ha ha. And then he'd talk in this sing-songy voice, like when he was doing the Xenu story. Then they went into the DC-10s. And then they went into the volcano. And he was just making it up. But they thought, he was just charming. He was really creepy, though. I mean, if you watch him interviews, he'd be like, "Oh, hi." He would say something and then he'd smile. But he had these like lips that went straight out. His lips were like this. So when he'd smile, he'd be like, just this. It was like a crooked smile. Like if you were to draw a cartoon of the evil, crooked, criminal con artist man, you would draw it exactly how John L. Hubbard looked, which was interesting. Just this like, yeah. Creepy. But but I mean, that's what a normal person sees when they see L. Ron Hubbard, or when they see a Scientology video. But, there's this, but for a really ignorant person who's not exposed to anything, or who has problems and is just not very intelligent, they see that and they don't have the shit detector turned on, and they go, "Oh, wow. Mr. Nice, smart, charming guy who's knows everything about everything and knows that the whole world is screwed up. And oh yeah, I know the world is screwed up. I don't fit in. So he's the answer. Okay." And so they go in and they follow him, and then they get sucked in, and now they're in, and then they're beaten down. They're brainwashed and beaten down until they either go psychotic and die, or they defect. But then when they defect, they can't tell anybody about the negativity of it. And so, because then they get harassed or they get sued, or, so they just keep their mouth shut. And so it's basically this Ponzi scheme. They get people to pay all the money in until they have no money left, because they have to keep paying, because, oh, now you have to do this, now you do that. And then they give up and they drop out, and they're like, fuck this, and they leave. But they don't tell anybody. So then they get new people to come in, pay all their money, and then they leave, but they don't tell anybody. So now we're having this big apocalypse where, people are actually telling people, and it's actually coming out in the open. Even though people have had problems with Scientology since the 60s, you know. And in 82, when I saw those hearings, I was like, oh, okay, you would have thought, oh, this is the end of Scientology. But 32 years later, and it's going strong as ever, and you got Kirstie Alley and Tom Cruise and all these people are still brainwashed by it. And oh, and the thing about Kirstie Alley, like, see, there's another kind of person who they prey on too, is drug addicts. Because they're like, they're against drugs, even though they're not against drugs. And and L. Ron Hubbard wasn't. One way he made a lot of money was by importing cocaine through Colombia, with the mafia. He sold drugs, yeah. But yeah, they make money off of pretending that they're against drugs by saying, get off drugs, because they're taking in addictive people who get addicted to stuff. So they get them off the drugs, and now they get them addicted to the e-meter and the mental masturbation of these little auditing sessions that they have, where they're like, hold the thing, now say it. Fail. Come on, do it again. It's kind of like gambling. Somebody's addicted to gambling with the slot machine. Maybe if I pull the slot one more time, I'll get another win. Oh no, another time. You know, because I guess they got a couple of wins when they first came in, because they use this e-meter thing, and so they just keep doing it over and over again, and they're totally, there's no conscience at all. So then they sell them a course, and then when they're done with the course, they'll sell the same exact course. They'll be like, oh, you know what? We revamped it. And this is what Jason Begay says, the actor. He says he was paying tons of money for a course when they were already in development for the version 2 of the course. So why wouldn't they just tell him that they had a new version coming out in a month and just to wait a month? But they charge them full price for the course, and then they charge them again for version 2, and then they charge them again, and then they charge them again, and then you get to this level, and then they tell you, oh, there's another level, so they basically, they don't, and this is, I guess, how criminals think. The rules that they live by in life, and the limitations that they put on themselves, isn't what's right and what's wrong, but it's what they can get away with. So they'll literally get away with what they can. And when they see that they've gotten all the money out of you, and you're not going to get any more money, well, now you're kicked to the curb, and now you're a bad guy, and now you're a suppressive person, and you're an asshole, and you better shut up and not say anything, and it's all your fault. So, yeah, and so one guy said, some Culkin said that Scientology is like a restaurant that's way overpriced, that has crappy food, and that when you leave, they cuss you out, and they get pissed off at you for coming in the first place. Yeah. Yeah, and so it's but see, it's all like that. It's this self-perpetuating cycle of evil, because the whole logic behind it isn't based on any logic at all, any science, any nothing. It's just fantasy world, the first dynamic is survive. Next dynamic is survive in group. It's like what? It's like something that anybody could come up with, but you latch onto it because you like that structure and you like to be in the group. So what people are really buying into, and I guess they don't realize it, is that high that they get off of by being in the special group that's like persecuted by everybody else, and they're special and they're better, and they want that feeling of camaraderie, and they want that feeling of, oh, maybe now I'm going to get the enlightenment if I pay some more. And but it's all a scam, and so people would finally get in so far into it. It's been so much that they realize that it was never designed. It's never based on fact or science or reality or anything. It's just nonsense. It's just like fantasy world, and the whole thing. It's so weird. Like they have their whole Sea Org where they dress up in the like sailors. And they have their whole language with the acronyms. They have to have a freaking acronym for everything. And they're acronyms for words that they even make up. So it's like a bunch of 5-year-olds getting together in their little playhouse, in a little fantasy world where they all, where they have like, their little, they dress up in their own clothes and their own everything, and they little play fantasy. Only it's real, and they think it's real, and it's adults doing this, you know. And it's crazy. Like David Miscavige was in front of the group of people talking, and he's like, "Now in year 32." So they think they're going to take over the whole world and create and create their own calendar, and we're not even going to use the Christian calendar anymore. Like in 500 years, it's going to be year 500 from when L. Ron Hubbard started the religion, and they want to take over the world. I mean, so imagine if they took over the world. We'd have this autocratic society where nobody could say anything, and there was always outing other people. Oh, he's SP, you know. And the only person who actually gets to have an opinion is the guy on top. But power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so the guy on top is totally nuts. And so there is this one example of what happened that it was called musical chairs back in Clearwater, Florida. I guess David Miscavige, he decided that all of his people below him, the executives, it was all their fault that they weren't selling enough. Oh, and another crazy thing about Scientology is the only thing that they value, and see, this is one thing, the thing that the self-perpetuating psychopathy, nutsiness of it all, is that the only thing they care about is money. And if you watch YouTube promo videos in Scientology, it's clear that's all they're selling. That's all they care about, because they're like, they have the examples of the person. They're like, who is the SP? Who is, look at this guy. And then they have the example of some guy like, and the examples they give are so stupid, man. Like they have a kid drawing a picture, and then his friend comes up and just paints an X on it. Oh crap, X. And so you have so this guy's not successful, and so the guy's like not selling enough. But the examples that they have are all about business and making money. Like, oh, you didn't sell enough units today, and then the guy goes to the Scientology classes, and then flash forward to a couple weeks later after he learned the Scientology techniques. Oh, and look, Johnny, he sold most units out of everybody, yay! And so according to the world of Scientologists, the yardstick for success is like how much money you have and how much you can sell. It's how good of a salesperson you are. And that's like, those are the examples. I mean, they have one example of the artist who wanted to sell the art, but the yardstick for his success was how many paintings he sold. Like not how good his art was, but like how successful he was. And so it's this whole hierarchical system. And so in Scientology, the people who are poor, I guess, the Sea Org people, they're nothing. They're shit on. They're just the workers. And then they got the people on top. And yeah, just this whole dog eat dog. So that's how David Miscavige and the whole how he treats his executives is, if they didn't sell enough units. Oh, and that's how what the Scientologists say, even in the local orgs. The level of success, how you're measured, isn't like how many people you audited, like how many gains you got from the audits, or how happy the people who were audited were with you. All it is how many recruits you got and how much money you made that week. And if you didn't make as much money this week as you did last week, then you get punished, and now you're a suppressive person, and you have to run around everywhere you go. And so I guess David Miscavige I guess they weren't selling enough courses or whatever that week or whatever. And so he said he was going to have to demote like 5 people. And so he played musical chairs, and he played Bohemian Rhapsody from Queen, like, oh, mama, I just killed a man. Da, 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 da. So it was like, oh no, the end of the world. I'm going to, it's all over for me. And he's playing it, and he's going, okay, play. And now whoever loses, whoever gets pushed out of musical chairs is the first person who gets fired. And so the executives were all like pushing each other and punching each other to try to wrestle each other to jump on the chair. And in order to not like get fired or get demoted, actually, to become like declared like a SP or whatever, a potential trouble source. And It's just yeah. And so then he would, and so, but he was so, it's so autocratic that, if somebody looked at him wrong. In fact, that actually happened. One guy, they were at a bunch of executives, adults, and I guess he said, "That guy's looking at me wrong. You're looking at me wrong. You see, he's looking at me wrong." So he jumped across the table and he starts beating him in his face and trying to beat him up. But he did that to a bunch of people, and that's why the executive people defected. Like, these people are still Scientologists. They just defected because they couldn't handle getting beaten up by David Miscavige, and so yeah. So now, I mean, now what? They want to start their own Scientology. But see, the whole premise behind it is crazy. So that if they start a new Scientology little church, it's not going to solve that much. It's going to become autocratic again. They're still going to believe, they're not going to have any value on being nice. Like when you see interactions with Scientologists on the street and stuff, they're really mean. And they yell at you, and and they make stuff up like, get off of private property, get off of my private property, when they're on the street, Or like, if you don't, what are you walking up to me with a mask? If you stay in my face, nobody walks up to me in a mask. If you do that, we're gonna get it on. I'm gonna kick your ass. And so they like attack people, and they it is they don't. And I think one reason is they think that, you see, they're supposed to be special and better than everybody else, and they have control over they have cause. It's their own word. They have cause, which means you have control over matter, space, time, and everybody else, especially the wogs, which is a derisive term for normal people. And so when they come out there, they're like, okay, because their idea of a Scientologist, the Scientologist controls the world around them. The world around them doesn't control you. So then they're all aggressive. So they come up to you and they're like, "I'm Scientologist, I'm aggressive, I control you. Hey, wog, get out of here. This is private property." No, it's not. "I say it's private property. I have control over matter, space, time." So even though it's public, they're on the public street. "Off of my private property, wog. I am Scientologist. You shut up. No, you shut up. I don't know." So they get like all bent out of shape and yelling and mean. So it's basically a religion that brainwashes you into doing what the guy above you tells you to do, and you can't express your opinions to anybody else around you, and then you take it out on the people below you, and you really take it out, and you yell at the wogs, and oh my God, it's crazy, dude. Oh yeah, and they I guess they sue people. They have all kinds of suppressive techniques. They actually killed a guy, a federal agent, in the late '70s, and they tried to kill a bunch of other people. And at one point, L. Ron Hubbard tried to get his son, before he defected, to get an atomic bomb for the Church of Scientology. And L. Ron Hubbard talked about the atomic bomb a lot. They were in the nuclear age in those times, and probably because L. Ron Hubbard wanted to tell a bunch of his followers, the wogs are doing a certain thing. They're trying to suppress us, and there's going to be an atomic bomb go off. I'm sure of it. In California, there's going to be an atomic bomb go off, I predict. And he probably wanted to detonate an atomic bomb in L.A. and then tell all of his Scientology followers how he, or maybe the world at large, how he was the only person who could predict that there was going to be an atomic bomb, and so then he could gain even more power that way. Because he was, the only one he had the magical powers to predict the atomic bomb going off. And you better follow Scientology now, or else there's going to be another atomic bomb going to go off. Or maybe he was going to even take it to the next level and actually, or as a front group, not as himself, but, say, if you don't pay me a certain amount of money, I'll blow up Washington, D.C. or something like that. But, yeah, man, the farther you get in the rabbit hole, the crazier it sounds. I think that's what happens. You get extra power. Back to the question, how did this guy get so much power? You get extra power by just lying. It's like that 180-degree shift. If it's 180-degree evil, you can't see that it's evil because you're seeing the good, which is 180 degrees on the other side of it. How could he possibly be wrong? Nobody's that evil to just have everything they say is a complete and utter lie. No. Anyways, I have more to say, but this battery's just about to die, so I'm going to end the video. Peace out. Please don't sue me. I don't think they can though. They're about to crumble. But maybe they would. But nobody will see my video. I'm a nobody. They won't sue me. Peace out.